We are live. We are live. Welcome to college football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe this channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and your friends if you want to support this Rebel Outpost YouTube college football channel. Just hit that $, put in the donation with the comment, and we'll get you a super chat as soon as possible. Welcome in to the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a legend in the chat room and with your phone calls later in the show. My first question is the visual and audio good? Good, bad? Give me a Y if it's good. Give me an N if it's bad. And give me an M as in Mary if it's a maybe. We did a little bit of adjustment here in the studio, or I should say my nephew did. I was first of all, I'm not smart enough, and second of all, why good. It looks good here on the dashboard. It looks good. This is the first time it looks like we are operating at 100%, I would say, since the end of January. This looks better than it has since the end of January. Anyways, good. I hope it holds up. First of all, I want to thank everybody for your very nice words and prayers and good thoughts and everything. The last time you saw me was Friday night, and I was yelling at all of you. Stop with the Power League obsession for 2026. Stop it. And by the end of the show, I did apologize. I will apologize again. And of course, today, small part of the monologue, we're going to be talking about Super League again. Andy Staples, on his show, they put out speculation on what a 48 team, 24 in the Big Ten, 24 in the SEC, what it will look like. I'll give you the image right now if I can find it. There it is. Andy Staples, Super League. So what I've decided to do, even though peek around the corner, we believe there's a 1% chance, 1% chance of this happening for 2026. I am going to feed your obsession, because this is what this show is. I'm not going to fight you anymore on it. We're going to feed your Super League obsession, and we will talk about the Andy Staples article on 3 Super League. How did they come to those 48 teams? I don't agree with some of that. But anyways, so we're going to talk about that. But. The main part of the monologue. All eyes on the ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips and Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark. Now, what they're going to decide to do inside the CFP negotiations. Now, you would say that they don't have anything to decide, Greg. Big Ten, the Big Ten, and the SEC, they're calling all the shots. There's nothing for Phillips and Yormark to decide. I would beg to differ. Yeah, they've got some options that they're going to push, they're going to pull, they're going to talk to the media partners, they're going to get together, they're going to give the cue to the Phillips and Yormark. Yormark and Phillips is going to talk to the media companies, go back to universities. There's 1,000 phone calls going on behind the curtain. Negotiations. Now, I know some of you think there's not going to be a Big 12 and the ACC even playing the Big 10 and the SEC in 2026. I think you're going to be mistaken, but we're going to feed your Super League obsession later in the show. But for now, with your feet on the ground, not with your head up in the clouds, we're going to be talking about a Big 12 ACC. What are they going to do? We're going to be going through a John Wilner article, Mercury News. He talks about what they should do. Came out today. Now, I think there's a big piece that's not being emphasized in that article. Again, when we go through the article, please put down your comments and thoughts and hit me up with a phone call later in the show. We also have the latest Tampa Bay Times, the great Matt Baker. The first hearing, this is an update, Florida State versus ACC. The first hearing for Florida State's complaint against the ACC in Leon County has been scheduled. It will be for April 9th it will be April 9th in Leon County Courthouse, according to court records, and will allow the judge, John C. Cooper, to hear the ACC's motion to dismiss or stay FSU's suit. North Carolina case in Mecklenburg County, filed by the ACC. As we all know, that hearing has been scheduled for March 22nd. We have March 22nd circled around our PATC calendar. We also have April 9th. April 9th. March 22nd, April 9th. Buckle up, brace for impact. So, first of all, before we get into the Wilner article, and then we're going to feed into your Super League obsession that has rabid, that has gone throughout the PATC community. I want to thank everybody who's come on in early. And I want to thank, again, everybody's kind thoughts and words and prayers. After I got done yelling at you all on Friday, about 15 minutes later, the wife and I noticed something very, very startling on the skin, into emergency room, and the battle has gone in our favor so far. We will continue on, and I think we're going to be just fine. So, I've been quite busy, still taking care of mom, still doing a lot of things here in my life, but we had to get back to peek around the corner because this is a very important week for college football for 2026 and 2032. So I appreciate you all coming in on this Monday early afternoon. Ducky is in the house. Richard L., Ryan Brooks, Expedition Greg, Chief Fan, Juan Carlos, Moth Prof, The Walking Geek, John, Cam and B, Rock Chalk, Jayhawk, Matt Neeson, Go Cyclones, Movie Time Blues, Who Blinks First, KS Berathan, K is in the house, RFR is in the house, Michael Uten, Bruce Harris, Boomer, Greeting Flugarians, Bill G, Carson, Rock and Rant. I can start now because Rock and Rant Mr. Hurricane is in the house. Stephen McNeely, The Red Raider, Laura Weiss, Daniel Montecastle, thank you, my good friend. Doing good. I'm doing good. Mr. Huskies is in the house. Anthony, Coy, Canes all day. Anthony's in the house. Lonnie Goodman and Larry, the GM. Joe Peck, MGC Sooner. Cowboy Thunder Fan 88, Tumasta. The fat guy from Minnesota sounds look healthy. Thank you. Not healthy. And I'm not looking good either. But the worm has turned. I think it's in our favor. We've jumped on it early. Chris Kenny. 1% in the words of Michael Corleone. Now who's being naive, Greg? Let's see, who else is in here? Juan Carlos, Tony, Tough Tony, Anthony Carlson, John Grove, Mick Stevens, Super League, 5 years off, 5, 6, 7, 8. Bob Husley, preseason champion. Outlaw heard North Carolina leaning more to Big Ten now due to research dollars. Phillips has no power. Chad is in the house. Okay, let's get to it. Thanks for all coming in. Start of the show. We got stuff to cover here. We have got stuff to cover. Again, we're going to be doing phone calls late in the show, super chats. We'll put up first in the chat room. Let's hit it, John Wilner. College football playoff controversy. Proposal for automatic qualifier spots actually benefits the Big 12 and the ACC schools once realignment kicks in. The 3-3-2-2 format would give the Big 12, the ACC, 2 automatic bids in 14-team event. The push for absolute power over college football signaled 1 month ago is well underway, with evidence now on full display. The Big Ten and SEC have proposed expanding the college football playoff to 14 teams, starting with the 2026 season, and assigning guaranteed bids to each major conference, but not in equal amounts. They want more, of course. They reportedly want 3 automatic qualifier spots apiece every year, with the Big 12 and the ACC receiving 2. Okay, so that's not totally accurate. They reportedly want 3 automatic qualifier spots. They want 3 or 4. The Big Ten and the SEC want 3 or 4, depending on the other items in the total package. Back to the article. On the surface, the 3-3-2-2 proposal sounds bad and it looks worse for the Big 12 and ACC, codifying them as a lesser than their peers in the most public of fashions. But they should take the deal in a heartbeat and then go celebrate together. John Wilner, Mercury News, take the 3-3-2-2. Take it. But is it really on the table like John Wilner believes? I'll get back to that at the end of the article. We provide a link to the article in the description. You can read the article yourself. Before we plunge into the details of the proposal and why it's actually good for the Big 12 and the ACC, context is required. The entirely predictable leverage play by the Big Ten and the SEC came 3 weeks after they announced a joint advisory board to address the significant challenges facing college athletics. One of those challenges is the college football postseason, specifically reconstructing the CFP to suit the needs of 2 conferences that have added a slew of brand names in recent years. Postseason expansion is inevitable everywhere. Since the CFP created a working group back in December 2019 to create models for an 8-12 team event, the NFL has expanded to playoff to 14 teams. The NBA has created the play-in tournament. Successful businesses don't shrink, they grow. And college football is very, very successful business, especially for the Big Ten and the SEC. They have grown to 18 and 16 teams, respectively, with the additions of West Coast Quartet into the Big Ten and Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC. The format devised years ago and approved in the fall of 2022 no longer fits. It's a medium. The Big Ten and SEC wear a large. The CFP is locked into a 12-team event for 24-25. But starting in 2026, there's no format. There's no governance structure. There's no revenue distribution model, no media contract. That leaves the Big Ten, Tony Petitti, SEC, Greg Sankey. They are effectively the sports co-commissioners with a blank slate in which to jointly create an expanded playoff that satisfies their ravenous membership. The initial proposal for a 14-team playoff reportedly called for each of the 2 heavyweight leagues to receive 4 AQ bids. That was excessive, sure, but negotiations usually start with excessive asks. From there, the discussions have moved to 3 AQ spots for both the SEC and the Big Ten, 2 for the ACC and the Big 12, one for the best team from the remaining leagues, the G5, and 3 at-large selections, which would include Notre Dame in the years it meets certain qualification criteria. Officials have termed the 3-3-2-2-1-3 model. For the purposes of our discussion about guaranteed bids for the 4 power conference, we will simply use 3-2-2. Why should the Big 12 accept a proposal that defines them as lesser entities than the Big 10 and the SEC? Again, it is in PATC's humble but very strong opinion that John Wilner is missing a part of the story. I'm not sure the 3-3-2-2 is on the table in the manner in which John Wilner believes it is. But we're going to go through the reasons why John Wilner believes the Big 12 and the ACC should accept the proposal that he believes is on the table. And then I'm going to let you know what I believe is going on. 3 reasons. The valuation. Big 12 and the ACC, according to John Wilner, should accept the 3-3-2-2. From a competitive standpoint, the 3-3-2-2 format assigns the ACC and the Big 12 2/3 the value of the Big 10 and the SEC. That's a greater valuation than they would receive in any other metric central to the sport. And that is why I don't think this is on the table. Again, I'll get back to it. Not the way that John Wilner is reporting it. Once all the schools switch conferences this summer, the Big 12 and the ACC won't have 2/3 as many major college football brands as the Big 10 and the SEC. They won't have 2/3 the TV ratings or 2/3 the media rights revenue. And they certainly won't claim 2/3 of the CFP berths previously earned. When you tally up the number of playoff bids for the conferences over the past 10 years using the reconfigured alignments, here are the totals with participating teams. The SEC 17, Big 10 12, ACC 7, Big 12 2, Notre Dame 2, and yet the 3-3-2-2 format provides them with 2/3 valuation. Again, I do not believe the 3-3-2-2 is on the table in the manner that John Wilner believes it is. And we're getting near the end of the article, and I will get into what I mean on that. The alternative. If the 3-3-2-2 proposal is eventually discarded, possibly alternative scenarios would: 1, provide 2 automatic qualifiers each to the Big 10 and the SEC, and 1 each to the ACC and the Big 12, or eliminate automatic qualifying bids for everyone. Both scenarios are worse, especially for the Big 12, because it has no equivalence of Florida State and Clemson. In a 2-2-1-1 format, and I really don't believe this is on the table, the ACC and the Big 12 could very well receive just 1 bid, the automatic qualifier, because their number 2 teams would compete annually in a battle royal for large berths against the Big 10, SEC Blue Bloods, not to mention Notre Dame. And in a format with no guaranteed bids, the Big 10 or SEC would gobble up at least 4 and possibly 5 spots. Both scenarios are worse for the ACC and the Big 12 because of the likelihood that in an average year, they would not generate 2 playoff-worthy teams. One of them might, but not both. They are in this arm in arm. 2 guaranteed spots for each is a good deal. John Wilner. The Big 12 and the SEC are locked arm in arm together. Phillips, Yormark. And now 2 guaranteed spots for each is a good deal. The future. Just as the 12-team format seemingly has become a 2-year bridge to the playoff becoming a 14-team event, so will the 14 serve as a bridge. Well, we all know it's coming. We believe a peek around the corner, it's coming in 2026 to a 16-team field. The negotiations currently unfolding are partly about the present and partly about the event's evolution. If the ACC and Big 12 secure 2 guaranteed bids, they will be better positioned when the 16-team format is created 3 or 5 years. Anything less, and they would begin those discussions in a weaker relative position. Because one thing is certain, folks, the power shift to the Big Ten and the SEC happening in real time will increase exponentially as they maximize advantages in brand power, revenue, recruiting prowess, and media platforms. The ACC and the Big 12 don't have much leverage, but they have more now than they will in the second half of the decade. There is one complication that must be addressed, however. According to a Yahoo report, the Big Ten and the SEC want exclusive rights on the first round buys each year. The number 1 and 2 seeds in the 14th field, regardless of how the regular season plays out. In that scenario, a 3-loss SEC champion could be seeded ahead of an undefeated ACC champion. Yes, the ask is galling, and it would damage the CFP and therefore the sport at large. We wonder if the push for the top-seeded exclusivity is like the initial ask for the 4 guaranteed bids, merely a negotiating tactic designed to enhance leverage for the Big Ten and SEC and other aspects of the discussions. And here is the PATC money shot of the article. Regardless, the Big 12 and ACC can never accept a format in which their champions would have no access to number 1 and 2 seeds, even with an undefeated record. PATC absolutely agrees with John Wilner on this. Absolutely agree. But John Wilner, I believe, is still missing a large part of what is happening in the negotiations. The threat of the SEC and the Big Ten breaking away and forming their own 2-conference playoff looms in the background of the negotiations. If they attempt to tie the 3-3-2-2 automatic qualifier format to the top seed exclusivity, the Big 12 and the ACC should call their bluff, tell them to pound sand. There's another way, John Wilner. There's another way. It's all the negotiation. And the ACC Big 12 must pick their spots to stand firm. They cannot allow the Big 10 and the SEC to have 4 automatic spots. And finally in the article, they cannot allow the 2 leagues to lock down the top 2 seeds. Give on revenue, give on governance, give on some other aspect of the format. Bingo, but take the 3-3-2-2 format, then pop the champagne. Here is the deal. We at Peek Around the Corner don't believe that 3-3-2-2 format for automatic qualifiers for the Power 4 conferences is on the table unless one or two things happens. Either 1, the Big Ten and the SEC gets the exclusive number 1 and 2 seed, the 2 buys in the playoffs, or they get a big chunk, even a bigger percentage of the total college football playoff revenue pie. Remember earlier in the article that John Wilner was talking about valuation? That 2 automatic qualifiers for the Big 12 and the ACC is better for them. They should take the deal because it's higher valuation for those two leagues historically and probably going forward. Well, Mr. Wilner and everybody else, the Big Ten and the SEC, they know that. They know that. So they want, that deal isn't on the table. We believe it's not on the table. Unless the Big 12 and the ACC either gives up more of the total revenue pie, playoff revenue pie, to the Big Ten and the SEC, or give them that exclusive first, second seed buys, first top two seeds and buys in the playoffs. The ACC and the Big 12 cannot give the Big Ten and the SEC exclusivity when it comes to buys in the first round. That's just not going to happen. So now we're left up with another choice. 3-3-2-2. 3-3-2-2. But with the Big Ten and the SEC grabbing a lot bigger of the pie, bigger slices of the pie, of the revenue pie, of the $1.3 billion that historically the power conferences shared. Or we're going to a 4-4-2-2, 1-3-16 team playoff right off the bat in 2026. We're not going to be waiting for 2028, 2029. We believe at Peek Around the Corner, it's really one of those two choices. 3-3-2-2, but with the Big Ten and the SEC making sure they get their share of this valuation that John Wilner was talking at the beginning of the article, or this thing's going to go to 4-4-2-2. 1-3, 16-team playoff. The part that we agree with John Wilner is the exclusivity. The Big Ten and the SEC are not getting that. But the Big 12 and the ACC are not getting 3-3-2-2 in no changes to the college football playoff revenue pie. We don't believe that is going to occur either. So there's a couple options out there. Phillips, Yormark, what are they going to do? What do you think they're going to do? Put it in the chat room. Or do you disagree? Do you think it's going to be a 3-3-2-2? Pop the champagne. No adjustments anywhere else. Okay. Now. Let's feed your obsession, shall we? Let's feed the PATC obsession, Super League, Andy Staples again. Peek Around the Corner. This has been our position since 2016. Since 2016. Consolidation, a Super League. Yes, this could all happen in the future. But no. We believe there's about a 1% chance of this happening in 2026. After this playoff format is settled, after this distribution model is settled, after the voting rights model is settled, I think somewhere down the line of those next 8 years, could this be a serious topic? Unfolding, more consolidation? Yes. Yes. Nobody is denying this. But the timing of it, yeah, we don't think this is happening for 2026. But a lot of people in the chat do believe it. A lot of people in the chat do believe it. Let's take a look at Andy Staples. I want to look at this. And then we're going to look at an article. Just a small On3 article. Okay, so In the SEC, you got Florida, Georgia, Clemson. Clemson, an addition. NC State, South Carolina, Miami, Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Virginia Tech, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Missouri, LSU, Vanderbilt, Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Red Raider, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Kansas State. So the additions, the 8 new additions to the SEC are Oklahoma State, Kansas, Texas Tech, West Virginia, Virginia Tech, Miami, Clemson, North Carolina State. In the Big Ten, they're going to be adding 6 according to Andy Staples' Super League. Florida State, North Carolina, Virginia, Pittsburgh, Notre Dame, Utah. So it's Utah, Utah, Notre Dame, North Carolina, Pittsburgh, Virginia, and Florida State. I think the chances of the Big Ten adding Pittsburgh is about 1%. I'm shocked that that's in there. Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of problems with this. Now if anybody comes out with their Super League projections, we're not going to agree with it, but Kansas is not in this. Kansas is not in this. And I'll tell you which they would be in it. And I'll tell you another thing. The Big Ten, 24 teams, if we're going to do this, if this is going to happen 5, 6, 7 years down the road, and it very well could, the Big Ten's going to get into Texas well before they get back into Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh. That's just the SEC. I would agree more with, although I believe those picks are they work better. Kansas State versus Iowa State. No offense to Kansas State, but them being in the Super League and Kansas not being in there, that just isn't. Kansas State has a way better football program historically, but they're not getting in before Kansas. That's just not happening. So, could Kansas State be in there? Yes. I think they'd be on the edge. But for Kansas not to be in your 48, yeah, I TCU not being in there. I don't know. I don't quite agree with this. But then again, I'm sure no one agrees with it because, whoops, hold on. That wasn't supposed to be there. Okay, let me get to, if I can find it here. Okay, where'd you go? Where did you go? Where did you go? Okay, here we go. Let me pop this up here. This is from Annie Staples. He's catching the Super League bug. That is the obsession of the PATC community. Since I'm now accepting the likelihood that there will be some sort of college football Super League sooner rather than later, we may as well imagine how that might look. History tells us that this process is never clean. So this probably won't nail the format. But I'm going to try to think like a television executive, since those probably are the people whose opinions would carry the most weight. First, let's assume the Big Ten and the SEC continue to work together, but don't actually merge. It would be cleaner if they did, but now we're dealing with the dueling TV networks. Let's also assume that this is just for football. The other sports remain governed by the NCAA as we know it, and the championship formats remain the same, even if some schools change conferences. Let's also be realistic and assume the Big Ten and the SEC won't be kicking out anyone currently residing in the league. That's going to frustrate some fans who think their team deserves a spot, say over Indiana, Vanderbilt. Leagues kicking out teams is probably less likely than the biggest brands leaving to form their own league, but that's another hypothetical column entirely. My guess is that a TV executive would set the ideal number of teams for the Big Ten and the SEC, which you can feel free to compare to the NFC, AFC, between 48 and 50. I'm going to set the number at 48, 24 per conference. It's because it's divisible by 6, 8, 12, and 16. Meanwhile, 24 is divisible by 6, 8, and 12. That offers the most flexibility for divisions, for postseason formatting, plus I like to include more teams rather than fewer, but I don't know that the TV folks would be willing to go to 56 or 64. I also have zero confidence in the leagues in the real world agreeing on having the same number of teams, but this is pie in the sky exercise, and I agree. I agree with that. The Big Ten, the Atlantic, Penn State, Florida State, North Carolina, Virginia, Pittsburgh, Maryland. Again, Miami, Florida. The Big Ten's going to go after before Pittsburgh, and I don't think Miami would essentially go to the SEC. I don't see Pittsburgh in there. I see the chances of that happening very slim. The Midwest, Michigan, Michigan State, Notre Dame, Indiana, Purdue, Rutgers. The Midwest, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Northwestern, Illinois, Iowa, and Minnesota. You're splitting up Ohio State and Michigan. That's not going to happen. West, UCLA, USC, Oregon, Washington, Utah, Nebraska. The SEC, the Atlantic, Florida, Georgia, Clemson, North Carolina State, South Carolina, Miami. Moonshine. Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Virginia Tech. The Mid-South, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Missouri, LSU, Vanderbilt. Southwest, Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Kansas State. As for those who made the cut and who didn't, I sincerely apologize if your team isn't listed. I can't imagine major college football without North Carolina State, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, Kansas State, and Utah. So I found places for those teams. But in the real world, one or two of those might get bumped for an Arizona or Arizona State or both. I also went with public school politics winning the day in Texas and added Texas Tech to the SEC. But history tells us that Baylor and TCU and SMU have a lot of friends in the State House in Austin. Perhaps one of those might find their way in. Also, a more forward-looking TV exec might look at the enrollment and alumni profile of UCF and decides it belongs in the Super League based on potential fan base. Meanwhile, I put Notre Dame in the Big Ten. It seemed the more natural fit. As precious as football independence is to fight in Irish, something like this would push Notre Dame into a conference. I also added Florida State to the Big Ten because that league simply needs some better programs. If it wants to compete with the week-to-week bangers the SEC would be putting out with this alignment. I'm assuming the leagues could make rules ensuring rivalry games get played. I kept Michigan and Ohio State in separate divisions to balance them out. But with only 5 division games, there's plenty of room for a rivalry game that isn't a division game. I don't know. Sorry, guys. Okay, there it is. That's the Super League. I'll put it up on the screen one more time for you to take a look at. Agree, disagree, let me know. Let me know what you disagree on. We have so many things going on in the college football landscape. So many big changes. I think people are skipping a lot of steps talking about going in the Super League for 2026. But here we are. I'm going to feed you your obsession. Andy Staples, Super League. Let me get to your comments. Ryan Willie, KU to the Big Ten. John Grove, K-State is the football brand in Kansas, period. Carla Jenkins, I do not see the ACC implosion. Chris S., that's hilarious having Kansas State than Kansas. Kansas State isn't going to be in the 48 Super Team League. Canes all day, thank you for your super chat. How will SEC Big Ten needs prioritize for CFP change after ACC implosion? I think they're prioritizing before the ACC implosion. Seems like the 14-team, 16-team field, not large enough to keep 20, 24-team leagues happy. I think whatever they do, whatever they end up doing, Canes all day with the CFP, it's going to be where they can be nimble enough to change it if they need to, if and when the ACC implodes. I think the governance structure is going to be different to where changes can be made. You're not going to need unanimous voting. Basically, you're going to need the Big Ten and the SEC agreeing. They're going to have the most votes. So I don't see that as a problem. But I do think right now they're looking at implosion happening. So that's part of the reason why they're going past 12. They want to expand it past 12 teams because of the ACC implosion. To me, this 12-team format is absolutely beautiful. Except everybody believes the ACC implosion is going to happen. Or most people do. Thank you for your super chat, Canes all day. Thank you for your generosity to the channel. Thank you so very much. Crab cakes and football. Spent $2 just to say no crab cakes and football. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Terrapin, for your generosity to the channel. Once again, Rob Ellen, Louisville is better than Pitt and K-State. Terry Kane, Miami is head of the Big Ten, not the SEC. Canes all day is guarantee it's going to be 24 teams before too long. Well, there's a lot of reasons why it's not going to be 24-24 in 2026. One of the reasons that no one wants to seem to talk about is the media market is tight. Tight. I don't believe Fox Sports, I don't believe these Big Ten media partners want to elevate all these. I don't think they want to pay more. Look what's going on with the CFP playoff. $1.3 billion, that's below projections. And Sankey and Petiti know that they cannot, if they expand the playoffs, they're probably not going to get more money from ESPN. That's just one of the many reasons. Now, once in a while, someone forwards me a comment. One of my friends forwards me a comment that someone said on a message board, that Pflugar, he throws all this bleep up on the wall and sees what sticks. I'm the exact opposite of that. I'm putting my foot on the brake all the time. I'm not throwing anything up on the wall. This Power 2 thing is a good example. Yes, it very well could happen years down the road. There's so many reasons why it's not going to happen now. And I cannot, if I'm going to shoot it straight to you, which is my job, then I got to tell you that. There's so many reasons why it's not going to happen now. But we'll see what happens this week and next week and the following week. The CFP playoff format negotiations continue on. But where's all this money going to come from? Fox gave a deep discount to Oregon and Washington. Oregon and Washington. As the 17th and 18th Big Ten school. The money is tight out there. The media market is tight. And people got these two conferences adding up to 24-24 in the next couple of years. It ain't happening. Just is not happening. In my opinion. Then Katsawaran 44221 straight 16 completely devalues the CCGs. That I would agree with. Except you give let's say the top 4 ranked conference champions automatically 1, 2, 3, 4 seed. They're the top 4 seeds. But other than that, there is no value given. You're absolutely right. It's the weakness of my 4-4-2-2-1-3. However, I think it's a better option than the other ones that are facing the ACC and the Big 12. I think it's a better option for Yormark and Phillips. I think it's their best option. But you are absolutely correct. Thank you for the super chat. I do appreciate your generosity. Terry Kane, media market is underwater. Don't see much of this happening. Yeah, Big Ten has already got their media deal. SEC's already got their media deal. ESPN just last year did not commit to paying the SEC more if they expanded to 8 conference games to 9. The college football playoffs projection, it didn't hit projections, the money that they're going to get. You got the NBA circling around there. Everyone's trying to get the slice of the NBA. And this is all going to be done here in the next 3 weeks. Again, I'm not trying to be a spoiler. I'm not trying to ruin everybody's fun. But if I don't tell you how I think it is, how people are telling me it is, then what good am I? It's a 1% chance. However, go ahead and speculate on it. But I got to give you the straight shot on it. There is Andy Staples Super League. He's got Texas Tech Red Raiders, Texas A&M and Texas, all in the SEC. And the Big Ten doesn't have anybody in the state of Texas. I don't see that happening. Okay, we're going to open up the phone lines here. This is what we've been covering so far. The Super League, Andy Staples. We've been talking about John Wilner. The college football playoff format negotiations going on. We've got Leon County, April 9th, Florida State, ACC. It has been set. It has been set. The date is April 9th. There it is. April 9th, Leon County Courthouse. According to court records, Judge John C. Cooper to hear the ACC's motion to dismiss or stay Florida State's suit. The North Carolina case, filed by the ACC in Mecklenburg County, has a hearing scheduled for March 22nd. So circle your March 22nd date, circle the April 9th date. Peek around the corner. We'll be live on both those days. The phone lines are open. 763-260-1333. Let me have it. Let me know how wrong we got it here at Peek Around the Corner once again. Super League, did you like what Andy Staples put out there? John Wilner, 33221, pop the champagne. The ACC and the Big 12 won't have to give any. That's it? I don't think that's it. I don't think that deal, as said straight like that, is on the table.
Call from
Crab Cakes and Football.
Crab Cakes and Football. The floor is yours, good sir.
The definition of throwing something at the wall and seeing if it sticks is what Andy Staples put out. That is not going to work. Because if right now the Big Ten's at 18, so if they're going to go to 20, they're going to give Florida State, Miami, I think. So then you got to get the SEC to 20, so they'll get Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, or something like that, maybe NC State. So that brings them both to 20. Now, if you want to go 20 to 24, you got Notre Dame, then you go to 2 or 3 Texas schools, probably 2. Either get Texas Tech and TCU or something like that, and then make the 4th one Kansas and be done, and then whatever the SEC wants to get from there. So, I mean, but I hope it never goes to 24 personally. I really didn't want it to grow this big, but unfortunately, everybody talks about it and everybody starts thinking they want it, so then they start doing it when they're really not listening to the criticisms. They're just listening to the hype and circumstance, and then, so, yeah. And I don't want the automatic qualifier buys. I think they should go with the 3-3-2-2. I mean, that's the way it's going to come out anyway for the most part. I mean, yes, there's going to be an outlier, but it's not going to. I mean, I prefer just go straight up best 14 and be done with it. But then you got to go by subjectivity. So they're trying to defeat subjectivity. So they need to do something to take it out of the College Football Playoff Committee's hands And after Florida State debacle this year, kind of understand that. So, that's I can see why they're trying to get some kind of automatic qualifier. At least they're going to be in, and then that's all they're doing now is matching them up. So, and the bigger brands are going to be in the SEC and the Big Ten. Yes, you're going to have a couple of big brands. They're still not in it until they decide to join it, like Florida State, like Clemson, like North Carolina, and a few others. So, but yeah, I'm not liking the 24-24 or 48 teams. I think there should be 3 20-team pods, or even 4 if they can get it to that amount, or do something with the ACC to keep it afloat. Because you got Stanford that deserves to be in there a little bit. I mean, they've got teams that it's just amazing how off-cited his article was.
Yeah,
So.
I don't know. I mean, Colorado's not in that, right?
Colorado. There was another team that's not in there, and now all of a sudden it left my brain. I'm trying to remember who's not in there. You already said Kansas isn't in there.
Arizona School's not in there.
There's a lot there. Yeah,
CF's not in there. Louisville's not in there.
Not in there.
Iowa State's not in there.
I mean, they want to keep the rivalries, and you got to keep the rivalries and put them in a division, same conference. That's why you should go with Florida State and Miami. You should put Iowa State in there with Iowa. Things if they were going to do that, but I don't think Iowa wants Iowa State in there. But then again, Texas Tech didn't want Texas in there, and they got him. So I don't know. This is a mess. This is a mess that I don't like hearing about. I wish they would go back to being a little bit more simpler and just, if they want to go to 20 teams, that's a bit much, but at least it's doable. Go ahead and just get Florida State and Notre Dame and just say we're done. But if they need to go to 21 because of Miami, I see it. But and whatever SEC wants to do, but and now you're going to get to where Vanderbilt might ask to be out. They might say, you know what, we're not even going to worry about football anymore, and ask to get out of it at some point.
But why would they ask to be out? Because they get all that money, all that exposure, and they filter that into their beautiful baseball program. It feeds other.
True.
Yeah,
But 65-0 whippings by Alabama and Texas A&M and all, and anybody else. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's some of these teams put in backups by the end of the first quarter just to keep Vanderbilt semi-competitive. But and same thing with a few other teams. There was a day when my Terps were the exact same way, so I know how that feels.
Yeah.
So, but that was all I had to say. All right, man. Hope you feel better.
Beautiful.
All right, thanks.
And I would say this, if Notre Dame ends up being the 19th or 20th Big Ten team, not a whole lot of reason for Big Ten to grow past 20. So it all depends on what Notre Dame does too. This is college football's peak around the corner. What I try to do is all my connections, all the people we've talked to over the years, all the stories we've broken, it's difficult enough to try to get what's going to happen 3 days down the road, a week down the road, 3 months down the road. And we've been able to do that. But the same people out there on X who swore up and down that USC was not going to join the Big Ten. They swore up and down that Oregon and Washington were not going to the Big Ten. They swore up and down that the Pac-12 was not going to get poached by the Big 12. They are wrong over and over and over and over and over again. And then suddenly, They can't see a couple of months ahead of them. They don't understand the lay of the land ahead of them. But all of a sudden, they can understand that we're going to Super League in 2026. Whenever we do go to a Super League, or if we do go to the Super League, USC going to the Big Ten, that was a part of it. As Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC, that was a part of it. So the same people who got all that wrong, who didn't see any of that happening, are the same people day in and day out are saying, oh yeah, Super League, 24 teams each, going to happen in the next year or two. Super League, Super League, Super League, Super. And they didn't know what was going on the previous 2 years. The Super League could happen because of consolidation. This consolidation that we if it's more valuable to the schools that are in the Big Ten, the SEC, to the media partners, if there's enough slot to fill, there's a lot that go with it. But there are also other forces out there that could peep up, like big conferences fracturing, for example.
Call from
Bobby.
Bobby, the floor is yours. What do you got to say, sir?
As an Iowa fan, talking to a Gopher, in terms of what you prefer for the playoff, I agree with you wholeheartedly. A Gopher fan and an Iowa fan agree completely.
Bobby, can you? I'm sorry.
Sure. Do your thing, Greg.
I apologize. I got behind and I'm a little out of it. So, Ryan Willie, thank you so much for your early peak memory, third month. Send Minnesota to Conference USA. The evil Badger using his generosity to take a shot once again at my beloved Golden Gophers. Thank you so much, Ryan Willie. You are hereby Cloak and Dagger Knighted once again. And John Till. No Stanford, Cal, Colorado, BYU, Arizona State, Syracuse. Thank you so much for your super chat, John. Appreciate it. Your continued generosity. Thank you so much. Bobby, I apologize. The floor is yours.
Oh, that's all right, Greg. I'm happy you're getting lots of support. It's what needs to happen. And I want to say I agree with you on. I think the 16 team thing is the only thing that works that will kind of make everybody happy. Mm-hmm. I also think if I was the Big Ten SEC, I would be reaching out to the Big 12. The Big 12 wants to expand the NCAA basketball tournament because they've invested so heavily in being a basketball conference. And if I'm the Big Ten and SEC, I need another big conference to be on my side. And I would say, we will support you in your thing if you support us in ours. And I think they could, you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
That, because really, I understand what the Big Ten and the SEC are doing, because whatever they work out for 2026 is not just for 2026, it's for at least 7 years and probably a 10-year contract. Don't you think so?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, then they have to take their shot, Greg.
Yeah.
This is locked in for a decade or close to it. They have to take their shot.
Yeah.
You can't be locked in for 10 years at something that's going to be non-optimal for you. Now, if they could get the media to back off and say, can we do this for 4 years, and then it might alleviate some pressure, but the media doesn't want that because they want something secure. They don't want to be at the negotiating table again next year and having to do this again. They want a 7, 8, 9, 10-year deal. And that's why you see the Big Ten and the SEC pushing on this, because they also are going to get locked in then for X amount of time. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at, people forget this. They think we haven't really talked about it. They think it's just 2026. No, this is up to like 2036 potentially.
Yes.
And you don't get a chance to renegotiate in between there. Then you have to take your shot. You have to throw your weight around, and you have to do it now. It sounds cruel, and that's why I look for the Big Ten and the SEC. If I was them, I would try to bring the Big 12 in and say, we will support you with the expanding on the basketball side of things if you support us in what we're trying to get done on the football side of things. And part of the problem here is too, and I've seen other people say and realize this. Really, what the Big Ten and the SEC are trying to do is what the NFL did, but they only had two conferences. You know, you have the NFC and the AFC, and you can make it work really well with just two, but when you have 3, 4, 5, and then it makes it a lot more complicated to try and create this thing. And that, again, it just supports what you're saying with your 16-team playoff. It's because this is more complicated. I think you need more teams in and more access. As you've always said, more access is not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. No, but that's just kind of my thoughts on where things are at right now. Great, and I wonder, just some things I've heard. I wonder if the ACC. Do you think they're negotiating, or or is the ACC going to go to the mat on this thing with Florida State?
I don't know about going to the mat, but I don't think they're negotiating either. Not until we see what happens on March 22nd and April 9th. Right?
Yeah.
So,
see,
I think
from the last responses we've gotten,
I think we're all going to have to reevaluate. What was that?
Just from the last responses we've gotten and stuff, the ACC, and that which means ESPN, I think they are ticked at Florida State to the point that, now I don't know how much they want to go toward Discovery. You know, we've always said nobody wants Discovery. I don't know. I just think they're so ticked. And I wonder if also, like I say, we've all wondered what's in that grant of rights in their contract with the ACC. I wonder if they thought they owned Florida State, and this idea of Florida State leaving like this has just got ESPN beside themselves. And you see the AC. I also wonder. Here's a great question, Greg. In that last thing with ESPN, when they responded and they put the word felony in there, did the ACC lawyers sign off on that? Meaning the ACC knew they were going to potentially call one of their fellow, or potentially call some of their fellow administrators felons, and the ACC signed off on that. I wonder, because if they did, that's another wow.
Yeah, great question.
Isn't that a good question?
Yeah,
and also, if they didn't get to look at it, what does that say? Yeah, that's just a question I wondered kind of after the fact. But anyway, I'll let you go, Greg. Thanks for your show. You're doing great.
You got it. I appreciate it, sir. Great call.
Yep. Thanks, Greg. Bye.
Got it. Bobby, beautiful.
Call from
Chris Kenny.
Hello. Call again. Someone dropped off right when I was picking them up. Joe Z, what would be the Gopher Godfather's entrance fight song in AEW? I got it, Joe. I got it. I would ask Tony Khan. To buy the rights.
Call from
Chris Kenny.
Chris Kenny, can you hold on 1 second, sir? Chris?
Greg, are you there? I'm there. Yeah. I'm here, Greg. Are you here?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. All right.
Can you hold on a second?
Absolutely.
Okay. I got to answer this question by Joe Z. What would be the Gopher Godfather's entrance fight song in AEW? I would ask Tony Khan to buy me the rights of Elvis Presley's Love Me Tender. So when I'm walking down the stage, going to the ring, I would be in an Elvis suit, right? Elvis jumpsuit. Not like the honky tonk man, but a real Elvis jumpsuit. But my face would be painted a little bit like the Joker. I'd be a little bit off the wall Elvis Presley character. Love me tender, love me sweet. It would be very, just calming music, romantic music coming down. And when I hit the ring, I beat up my opponent. That would be my entrance song, Josie. I hope Hope that answers your question. Chris Kenny, the floor is yours. Thanks for calling, sir.
I would go with Elvis Comeback Special, Greg. That would be my recommendation.
Okay. All right.
No, I mean, here's the deal. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. I think your show is awesome, and I think you're doing a great job. I will say, though, I think you're being a bit naive on where these things are heading. And I don't think that it's all just anonymous losers on Twitter, you know who, talking about super leagues and breakaways and all that. And I was sort of in your camp not that long ago, thinking that this was a hypothetical and not something that could come to fruition very quickly. But I don't think Josh Pate and I don't think Andy Staples are making this stuff up just for clicks and views and that sort of thing. I mean, yeah, they like to gin the audience up, but I don't think that they would risk their credibility coming up with ridiculous things and saying that they're close. Yeah, it's one thing to say, oh, couldn't this happen 10 years from now? When these people are saying this could happen 18 months from now, I think it's worth listening and perhaps entertaining their position. And I think to me, you're a Wolves fan. I mean, I kind of feel like Brian Windhorst before that Rudy Gobert trade happened, where they're like, why are these things happening now? Why would you do that? And this idea of giving automatic qualifiers to the ACC, a league that every sort of an open secret that these two behemoths, the Power Two, whatever you want to call them, are going to pick apart in the near future. Why would you give 2 automatic qualifiers to a league that's about to be ransacked of its best brands? Why would you give 2 automatic qualifiers to Wake Forest and Georgia Tech, or some combination thereof? Why would you do that?
Because if the ACC implodes under this new governance structure, they're going to be nimble enough to make quick adjustments to it. It's not going to be like the last. It's not going to be like the last playoff contract, but no changes could be made unless there was a unanimous vote. That would be my answer to that question.
I think that's a possibility, and I'm not saying that the Super League thing's a certainty either. But I think that's a plausible explanation. But by your own admission, not too long ago, they're going to settle all this stuff in the next week and a half. I'm not quite so sure. Here we are talking about access. We haven't even gotten to the money. We haven't even gotten to governance. And here we are, we're still, can't figure out who's going to get admitted and what size the playoff is actually going to be. So I tend to agree with Josh, which is that, you can ask for the moon and maybe you'll get it. And Sankey and Petiti will look at each other and say, can you believe these guys? And if they get everything they want, they get everything they want, including the automatic buy. But the AQ thing strikes me as a tell that they're going to continue to ask for demands on top of the buy when it comes to governance, when it comes to money, that eventually forces these other guys to blink and say no. And at that point, maybe Yormark and maybe Phillips say, well, where are they going to go? What are they going to do? They can't possibly break away. They can't possibly run off and do this thing everybody says they do. And here's what I would suggest. I think it's not unreasonable that we could go back to the future. And you go back to the era not long before the BCS, where the conferences decided what their own postseason format looked like. There were bowl contracts and bowl tie-ins that all the leagues had, and they staged their own bowl games. There was a poll at the end of the year to decide who was the quote-unquote national champion, and life went on just fine. The courts have said that the conferences can do whatever the heck they want. So what is to stop the SEC and the Big Ten from saying, okay, well, we tried. We even offered the ACC 2 automatic qualifiers. But, we wanted money because more money because we brought the value. We wanted the authority to change the structure should we move forward, and these guys said no. And what's to stop them from staging their own individual league playoffs as these 20 or 24 team leagues that they can then sell to their media partners, and then stage a national championship game at the Rose Bowl or stage it at the Sugar Bowl, or you can alternate it every year where the leagues have their own contracts with those bowl games and sort of crown a de facto national champion that I just don't think any reasonable person, when you're taking an AP poll down the line, would say that that's not the national champion. I mean, maybe there'd be some crazy scenario where Kansas State goes undefeated, but come on, that's not going to happen. The winner of those 2 leagues, of that super league, so to speak, would almost always be the national champion. The college football playoff is nothing more than a series of contracts. And when those contracts expire or they opt out from them, those leagues basically caused the college football playoff to collapse on itself. So in this short-term period before there is a full-on, if there ever is a full-on breakaway, those two leagues can just do what the Big Ten and Pac-10 did for decades. They said it themselves. They have this kind of conference tournament. I think Immaculate's talked about it, and I think he's right about it. And you ask, like, where's the money coming from? Where's the money coming from for all that? I mean, I agree with you on that. I think that is an open question. But I would suggest this. The contract bowls that are part of the college football playoff are already, like, way overvalued. I think that money is kind of, like, baked into what those games are. If you have only 2 of them instead of 6 of them, I think that's money that could be folded into a national championship game that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars on its own. And then the league playoffs that they would then stage themselves sort of take the place of whatever's left over for this $1.3 billion offer. On top of that, the individual members from the ACC or the Big 12 that would be coming in, and you can quarrel about who makes the 24 or not. Yeah, I'm probably more in line with you than Andy Staple on who probably makes that cut. But who cares? They could come in even at the current par value of what they're getting under their current agreement. And if the future of college football is a super league where the national champion is going to be crowned in one of those 2 conferences, and those conferences are telling these schools, get on the train now or you're never getting on, it's leaving the station, I guarantee you that they would jump at the chance. They don't need a big bump in media money in the short term, and they would take it. SMU joined the ACC for nothing. These schools, I think, would come on if they could be held harmless at whatever they're getting paid in the Big 12 or whatever they're getting paid in the ACC. They would join those leagues because the next time the contract comes up for renewal, they're coming in at a full share. The playoff is going to be renegotiated at a full share. By then, Amazon might own Fox Sports for all we know. And like the economic picture changes completely. Everything gets wiped clean, and you're starting from basically an NFL model where the AFC and NFC have a lot of negotiating power since they now have all the big brands locked up. And I think a lot of those schools would happily take a little bit less money in the short term in order to be part of the bigger picture moving forward where they're going to make a hell of a lot more. So I'm not saying that's guaranteed to happen, but I think it could happen. I think it's more than a 1% chance it could happen. And I think there's a way that it could happen in 2026, even by staying in the NCAA, even within staying in FBS, not having to basically recreate an entire collegiate, athletics association apart from the NCAA on the fly. You could do it within the current architecture, maintain where March Madness and the Olympic sports are, and if you need or feel compelled to break away and create something new from scratch, you'd have time to do it then. So I think that there is an off-ramp for the leagues if they really want to make a power play and they really want to basically call the other leagues bluff and make these outrageous demands. They have a plan B. I don't think they're doing this for kicks and giggles. I really do think they have a plan B, and I think they're prepared to use it if it came to that.
A lot of great comments there, Chris Kenny. Beautiful call. You better make sure you call this channel again. I appreciate this incredible call. I agree with almost everything you just said. The future, potentially, Super League. What I cannot get my arms around is the off-ramp that takes us to 226 or 227 or 228. We have the Sankey and, just about everybody. Charlie Baker. We've had all these people coming up to Congress asking this year for a special carve-out. We want to keep our amateurism. We've got senators working on it. We've got Booker and Cruz, Democrat, Republican. We've got all these people working on it. They can't quite get it done. We've got these court cases coming on in with guns a-blazing. We've got a Big 12 media contract that goes on for 6 years. Nobody wants to see ESPN and the Big 12. There is so many hurdles for a Super League to form for 2026. In my strongly held opinion, these guys can't get... There's no way they're going to be able to form a Super League by 2026. There's no way they're going to be able to turn off their computers for these virtual meetings that are going on for 3 weeks, and then form a Super League. The politicians are going to get involved like you've never seen before. It's going to be so that the off-ramp, the exit ramp going from what we have now to a potential Super League 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now is going to be so much more doable, safer than it would be to happen now. I'm not saying that the Super League's not going to happen. I've been Mr. Consolidation for years. But for it to happen in 2026, I don't see any. I literally do not see anything on the ground, the environment, the landscape that would have this happen, except the only part of it is we're in this 3-week crunch, right? And SEC and the Big Ten are using this leverage, and I don't think they're doing it all for kicks and giggles. But man, if I'm putting my chips in the middle of the table, which I'm going to do right now, I don't have it. I don't have this happening for 2026.
I don't want to monopolize your show. Can I just respond to a couple things and then I'll jump off?
Yeah.
On the politicians thing, I don't think anybody is worrying about the politicians. Like, Ukraine is about to fall and they can't get their act together to actually support a war effort. I cannot see Congress doing anything other than holding some show hearings, which they always do, and doesn't really result in anything. I don't think that's going to stop anybody. Number two, on the issue of the courts, I mean, I agree with you. I think that those are incredibly impactful unknowns that are going to largely determine what the future of collegiate athletics is. But I think the biggest impact, quite frankly, is going to be felt by the smaller leagues that don't have the resources to adjust to a worst-case scenario. I think the Big Ten and the SEC are probably going to operate as if the NCAA loses all of these cases and they professionalize the athletes anyway, which I think they have the resources to do and frankly want to do, because it will keep them out of the courts moving forward. You've talked about that professionally. Some form of collective bargaining, some form of employee status is where they're going to have to go. And I don't think they need to wait to see what the courts say. I think right? Like the 1984 Supreme Court case, the Oklahoma case, I mean, it basically tells the conferences that like they are the units of governance, right? They're the entities that have to compete against each other, but they can also set their own rules. And I think Alston, at least the Kavanaugh concurrence, affirms that. So I think that the conferences have the authority to assume that the new world is going to come and come very soon when those decisions get handed down in a way that like the America East Conference can't. So I don't know that the uncertainty created by the court cases is an impediment to this necessarily. And the third point, and then I will hang up and listen, is I agree with you on the media money. It's like the Big 12 just entered into this contract. Like, are we going to rip it up and start all over again? That to me actually seems a little stickier, and that's why I kind of think the answer is whoever gets the call up just, stays basically at par where they are with ESPN and the other leagues. I don't know what the Big 12 contract looks like, but the ACC contract had that composition clause and an option to walk away, which I think the ESPN is going to exercise. So I don't think the networks are probably, committed to paying, Baylor or whatever, $33 million or whatever it is if everybody else leaves. My guess is, just as you said, the leagues and the college football playoff could respond to change, material changes, right? If the ACC gets blown up, I think Fox and ESPN will have the ability to do that too. And would certainly exercise the right to do that because I think they all want to move in this direction. I think, like you said, consolidation is the way forward. And if it can come sooner rather than later, I think that they would take sooner rather than later because it gives everybody more certainty to move forward on. So that's all I'll say. I love your show. You
Beautiful.
The man.
Beautiful call. Right. Please call again, Chris Kenny.
Will do, sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you. I'm going to make one more comment on this. I'm going to make a lot more comments on Rock and Rant. ACC, if not all the P4, have conference meetings next week. Every AD is going to get questions about the playoff or realignment. Could get very noisy. Thank you, Rock and Rant. I appreciate the super chat. Mr. Hurricane, once again. That's true. We also have media days. And here is the Big Ten media day for the summer. ACC, I believe, is earlier in July. We'll talk more about these dates tomorrow. Big Ten football media days, July 23rd to 25. So thank you so much for the super chat, Mr. Hurricane. Appreciate it very much, your continued generosity. There's another reason There's another reason why the PATC Sportsbook, which is right across the street from the Holy Smokes Theater, you got to take a right on Keith Jackson Parkway. There's a reason why the sportsbook says, what would it be? Moving to a super NCAA football, college football moving to a super league plus 10,000. That's the odds. So if you put $100, you win $10,000. That's how big an odd, that's how long shot that play is at the PATC Money Shot for college football to move to a super league in 2026. One of the big reasons why the odds is that in the PATC Sportsbook is, do you actually think, I don't, do you actually think that Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey can pull this off? I mean, you know, doing this Super League, that's going to take a lot of work, a lot of vision. That's going to take coordination. That's going to take your media companies buying in. They're not even buying in right now. They half discount for Oregon and Washington. ESPN didn't want to pay more for 9 conference games for the SEC schools. But besides all that, it's going to take a lot of really good, hard, impressive results in such a short period of time. They're going to get all this done. Petitti and Sankey. And, you know, ESPN is putting all this pressure on for them to get this done. For them to get this done here in the next 3 weeks, or they're going to pull their offer. If this Super League was really happening in 2026, I believe ESPN would have already pulled their offer. I don't see anything on the ground. Boots on the ground. Eyes and boots on the ground. Anybody I talk to, I do not see it happening. 1% chance. Now, Chris Kenny had a beautiful call, gave a lot of good reasons why it should happen. A lot of great comments in the chat room why it should happen, why it could happen, but I'm not seeing any evidence of it happening. Now, by the end of the week, if we get some reporting on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, oh boy, Big Ten, the SEC, Sankey threw down a book and he's about to run off and say, we'll hold our own playoffs. Okay. The odds would change in the sports book. If I get a call from one of our contacts in the industry, or BTM and his associates, or one of the boosters, or any of our money perch guys, if they say anything to us, but I don't think, even if all the conditions were ripe, even if the media market was booming, which it's not, it would still be a very difficult task for Petitti and Sankey to pull this off at this time. This is like Sankey. You want to talk about negotiating in good faith. This is like Sankey with Bob Bowlesby, negotiating over the college football playoffs, expanding it from 4 to possibly 12 and everything. And at the same time, he was talking with Oklahoma and Texas for those two schools to leave the Big 12 to go to the SEC. If Sankey and Petitti are doing all this groundwork for a breakaway for now, for 2026, while doing all these virtual meetings, whatever, that is times 20,000 on what Kevin Warren did to Jim Phillips in the Alliance, a knife into the back. We're talking 20,000 times that. Do you think really that's going on? I don't. I believe they're trying to get some structure done, doing a lot of leverage, negotiations, get it settled, and then the Super League discussions, I think, are going to get hot 4, 5, 6 years down the road. And even then, it might not happen. A lot of people disagree with me. Chris Kenny had a great phone call. Okay, phone lines are open. Phone lines are open. 763-260-1333. Movie Time Blues. Politics won't allow a Super League. I mean, okay. They've been going to Congress here. They've been getting on an airplane, going to Congress. All these commissioners going to Congress, looking for a way out, looking to try to keep amateurs, and they're all working for this. And then suddenly in the same calendar year, boom, Super League, Big Ten, SEC, we'll add a few schools, shut everybody out.
Call from
Steve-O.
Steve-O, the floor is yours. Thanks for calling, sir.
Hey, Greg, glad you're doing better.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm feeling it a little bit right now, but we'll get through it.
Hey, you got a pencil and paper?
Yeah, I sure do.
Okay. If you remember, not to pat myself on the back, but I brought up the 14-team playoff before the media started talking about it.
Yeah.
I've got another idea for you. 13-team compromise.
Holy smokes. 13-team playoff.
Okay, 3 buys. The 4 versus Liberty, or whoever the G5 is.
4 versus 12.
4
4
versus
versus 13. I'm sorry.
Yes. And then you got 5 versus 12, 6 versus 11, 7 versus 10, 8 versus 9.
Yes, sir.
Now, as Jimmy Pitaro knows, there's really only 5 good TV windows in that weekend. Thursday's pretty well out because ESPN can't tick off the NFL because they're an NFL partner.
Yeah.
So you want 3 games on Saturday, say noon, 4, and 8. Of course, you got to have the talking heads talk between games a little bit. And then on Friday night, you'd have, say, a 7:30 where it might be the 4 versus 13 game. And then, like the other game, start about 8:45, start about halftime of the first game. Now, the money, people keep talking about, well, they're not getting enough money. Well, if you have multiple games going on at the same time, your value is going down. You're not gaining value for what you want. So 5 games is really the max in any weekend. And then that weekend, I know I brought this before, but I don't think anybody paid any attention to it. That same weekend last year, the NFL had 3 games on NFL Network. The first game was Cincinnati, Minnesota. So the Ohio State fans wouldn't like that. A lot of Cincinnati and Ohio State, fans of both, of the Bengals and the Buckeyes. Indianapolis played Pittsburgh, so you wouldn't want Notre Dame or Penn State. And then Detroit, Denver, Michigan, Colorado. So, I mean, that's just an example, but that's telling you what's out there. But ESPN might be able to, I don't know the details of this new agreement that they're sort of taking over the NFL Network, but they could maybe negotiate with Roger Goodell so that they'd have more doubleheaders on Monday night or whatever, but to get around that. But if I was ESPN, I wouldn't want playoff games up against the NFL games. That's cutting the value again. So what do you think of a 13-team?
Well, that does work when it comes to TV schedule. No question about it. Absolutely no question about it. Now, we're still looking at 5 top. You just add an at-large bid, and the top 3 conference champions going to buy?
Well, yes, top 3. And if the Big Ten SEC can't make it in the top 3, then they've had a bad year.
Yeah.
But you could go a 3-3-2-2-1 with 2 byes.
Now I like
or
it.
two at large.
I like it. I like it. I like the 12 team. I like the 13 team. Will that satisfy the Big Ten and the SEC's thirst? Probably not. But
Greg, if they have a bad year, either one of them, and can't be one of the top three buys, that means they've really had a bad year.
But it isn't so much that. It's the Big Ten and the SEC want those automatic. They want multiple automatic qualifiers each. I think that is something we know that is something that the Big Ten is completely dig their heels on, and I think the SEC has joined them because the media partners want the eyes on the conference games, more conference games in November. But I like the idea. I like it.
But the 2 at large, I mean, say your 4th team in the SECs are going to be Oklahoma, Tennessee, whoever. That means they just got to beat out Notre Dame and one other.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of the same thing with the Big Ten. If it's Penn State, Washington, if they have a better year than the Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's still going to be playing the ACC, so strength of schedule isn't that great.
Yeah. I like
they want games. They want games against USC, which is going to be a Big Ten team. So if USC beats Notre Dame, that's going to knock Notre Dame out. So I think it's worth looking at, and it's something that would be a compromise.
I like it. I would vote on it. I would vote yes on it. I'm just going to assume that it's not going to. I'm guessing it won't be enough for the Big Ten, the SEC, but I would vote yes. That's the best I can do.
Okay, let me give you this. Say Minnesota won the Big Ten, but they were only 9-3.
Yeah.
You think don't you think they would still get a top 3 bye?
No, I don't know. It's
but there again, if you're not sure they get a top 3,
if the Minnesota Golden Gophers are going 9-3 in winning the Big Ten championship game, that means the Big Ten ain't gonna get that many other schools, and they've had a terrible year, and they want automatic qualifiers You're making a good example of why the Big Ten wants 4 multiple qualifiers, just in case Minnesota does win that. You know what I'm saying?
But if the Big Ten winner at 9-3 automatically got a top when he only had 2 byes,
I don't think.
Well, you talk about an uproar.
Yeah.
So I wanted to throw that at you. And
got it. I like it.
Okay. All right, Greg.
Appreciate it, Steve-O. Great call once again. Beautiful. Yeah, I think that's where we are. Expedition Great. The Big Ten and the SEC will go down to 3 in exchange for a guaranteed first round bye. I don't think the ACC and the Big 12 are going to buy that. I don't think they're going to buy that. And John Wilner knocks it out of the park. They cannot allow the Big Ten and the SEC to have 4 automatic buys. But he also says, regardless, the Big 12 and the ACC can never accept a format in which their champions would have no access to number 1 and 2 seats. But I got a feeling that the ACC and the Big 12, those are their 2 options. Either 4 automatic qualifiers for the Big Ten and the SEC, or 3, but then they get an automatic bye. So John Wilner says both. They cannot The Big 12 and the ACC cannot allow the Big 10 and the SEC to have 4, and they cannot allow them to have access. They cannot allow the Big 12 and the ACC not to have access to number 1, 2 seeds. So John Wilner is painting the best case scenario that the Big 12 and the ACC should pop their champagne on the best case scenario possible. I don't even think it's possible. I think Jim Phillips and I almost said Bob Bowlesby. I think Phillips and Yormark are going to have to make a tough decision. I don't think it's going to be that easy. I don't think it's going to be 3-3-2-2. 3-3-2-2 Big 10 SEC. 3-3-2-2. You don't take more of the revenue pie. You don't have exclusive first round bye rights. It's 3-3-2-2. That's it. That's what John Wilner's painting. He says, take that and pop the champagne. I don't think that deal is available to the ACC and the Big 12. I don't think it is. That's why we at Peek Around the Corner, we've taken our shot on this about a week ago. We think this is going to 16 teams. 16-team playoff with 4-4-2-2-1-3, and it's going to be very difficult to schedule this. First round games. First round games are going to be incredibly difficult, just like Steve-O said. My scenario is very weak on the scheduling. How do you even pull that off? 2 on Thursday night, 2 on Friday night, 4 on a Saturday. That is the weakness of my 16-team no buys. But anyways, get back. The phone lines are open. 763-260-1333. Ryan Willie, terrible idea. Asking the NFL to put more games on Monday Night Football would upset Sunday subscribers. NFL has their media contracts. Thank you so much. Hold on.
Call from
Replica.
Can you hold just a second?
Yes.
I appreciate it. Ryan Willie, the Evil Badger, thank you so much again for your incredible generosity to the show. Wisconsin has a better chance of winning the Big Ten. Wisconsin has a better chance of winning the Big Ten than asking the NFL for the NFL to acquiesce, to put more games on Monday Night Football instead of Sunday Night Football. The NFL has their media contracts. Thank you, Ryan Willie. I do agree. Appreciate the super chat. Thank you so very much. Replica, the floor is yours.
How you doing, Greg? You feeling better?
I was. I'm doing okay.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
It was interesting hearing you go over your scenarios about what the Big 12 and the ACC are going to have to compromise on, and I just wanted to offer something that could be going on, but maybe not. I hadn't heard anybody talk about it.
Yeah.
I think people are treating this as if it's like a tag team match between the Big and SEC and the Big 12 and ACC, and that's true to a certain extent, but at the end of the day, they are looking out for their individual conferences, and they've had different needs. So I think for the ACC, I think Phillips would be willing to compromise as long as he kept his playoff access, because he knows he's getting ready to lose at least a couple big brands. We'll see how that shakes out. Mm-hmm. And I think for Yormark in the Big 12, I think the goal isn't really access, because they've shown over a consistent period of time over the CFP era that they can have competitive teams even without Texas and Oklahoma. I think they would probably be more prioritizing the revenue aspect and trying to stay as close to the Big Ten and SEC as possible, because ultimately that's what's going to keep your membership happy and settled in your conference and not having a head start looking at another neighbor's fence and what they can get at another conference. It'd be interesting to see if they So let's say that scenario plays out. Yormark wants more revenue, but he'd be willing to give the SEC and the Big 4 AQs, and then you have Phillips, who would be willing to do the same, but instead of worrying about revenue, he'd be more interested in protecting the access to make sure his conference stays viable. I wonder how that would play in the room, and what would the Big Ten and the SEC be more interested in, like going with?
That's a great call. Great comment, Replica, because you're right. I mean, the Big 12 and the ACC's interest don't align perfectly in these negotiations. And neither do the SEC and the Big 10. But we haven't been talking about the ACC and Big 12. Interests are not completely aligned. And you painted a really good, I believe, accurate picture of who would want more. The ACC, I do believe both those conferences align in the backdrop of these negotiations. They're talking about basketball, right? They're talking about the NCAA tournament. And I do think ACC and Big 12's interests aligned in that, where they want to expand the tournament, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of the negotiations, I think, in the backdrop of all of this. That's a great. Go ahead and continue on, Replica. But that is a great comment.
Yeah, I think at first when you said we were heading to 16, I didn't really believe it. But the more I think about it, I think it's going to have to be 16, and I think it could work if ESPN or whatever network is going to be sub-licensed willing to pitch in more money and make the pot a little bit sweeter for everybody, because everybody's compromising. The Big Ten, the SEC is compromising. Everybody else in the room is doing the same. It's
hard. It's very difficult, though, to figure out scheduling of that first round if it's 16 teams. Right. When is that first game starting on Thursday? When is the second game starting on Thursday? When is the first game starting on Friday? When is the second game starting on Friday? And then you got 4 games on Saturday. Where do those? How do you spread those out? I mean, it's got to be 11, 2:36, 9:30. It's possible. It's all possible, but it's difficult.
Yeah, I think the only way to make it work is the Thursday games would have to be day games. That way they don't interfere with the NFL, because that would be a conflict of interest for ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's interesting because I think we're gonna have to go to 16, but I don't know. It's everything's up in the air, and we don't know how that's gonna play in the room. Would they be willing to acquiesce to both of their demands? So if the Big 12 wanted more money and they're not worried about having as many AQs, would they be willing to go with that if Phillips is on the other side of the room saying, I need my AQs to protect my conference? And the other, I just want to last thing talk about the Andy Staples thing and this whole breakaway.
I'll put it up on the screen again here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think people they need to try to understand the media climate. The money is not there in the media industry right now. Now, before the pandemic, there was this idea, and what I think the 16-team playoffs should have been with the Power 5 champions, 5 AQs and then 11 at largest, and then you probably would have gotten the estimation that they wanted, but that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So I don't know where the money's going to come from, because you look around, there's only a handful of sports leagues around the whole world where the media value is going up. You have the NFL, the English Premier League, and Formula One, and college football. But even college football is kind of reaching the point where the bubble might burst, and there might not be as much money in the future. So I don't think the Big Ten and SEC has as much leverage as people are making it out to be, simply because the money isn't there and they have to get something done. If there was a breakaway, they wouldn't be getting $1.3 billion, because you would be effectively exiling like a good portion of the country, like as far as casual viewership. So everybody is going to have to compromise, and The Big Ten and SEC will get most of what they want, but I think the 2 first-round buys is a no convo. That dog's not going to hunt. I think they'd be willing to give 4 AQs if that makes the networks comfortable, where their investments being protected, and maybe they'll have to sweeten the pie a little bit. Maybe not much, but every dollar counts.
No.
So, we'll see.
All right, sir. Beautiful call, Replica. I appreciate it.
All right, one more thing. Put the your membership link down in the comments so I can get something.
I'm sorry, membership?
Yeah, so I can get one because I got gifted the other day. So.
Okay. How are you asking? How do you get one?
How do I gift?
Okay, go to the description below the video, description box below the video, and there is a link. Hit that link. It goes to my YouTube channel. Then there's a join button there. Okay?
No, I'm already a member. I just wanted to gift one. So.
I don't understand the question. You're already a member. Oh, you want to give one?
Gift one to somebody else.
I'm sorry. You want to give one. Go to your hit that $sign. That's how people put super chat by the comment area there. To the right of your comment block. Hit the $sign and it'll show you how to do a gift membership.
Okay.
All righty. I'm sorry, Replica. Appreciate it, man.
No worries. Have a good one.
You got it. All right. Okay, so here's the deal here. I mean, we're going to be closing up this live show. We've been on the air for 2 hours. I got to get on the road for a little bit. Got to take care of the situation that I'm at right now. But if something drops, if some big news happens, we could go live again tonight. But if not, we're going to see you tomorrow. Because I just got something on my phone. And I think there's going to be a report dropping. Now, the last time I said this, I said there's going to be a report dropping on college football playoff situation. The last time I gave you guys that peek around the corner, bam, 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 bam. We had like 4 of them the next day. And I'm getting the same heads up. So I'm going to give you the heads up. There could be something dropping here. It is 6 o'clock Eastern time. Almost 6 o'clock Eastern time. 5 o'clock Central time. I would keep your head on a swivel for the next couple hours. If something doesn't drop, I think something's going to drop early tomorrow. So, stick with us here at Peek Around the Corner. I got to get off the air now, but I could be coming back later tonight, if not tomorrow. So keep with us here at Peek Around the Corner. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Open up your notifications because we could come on live at any time. Follow us at Flug Empire on X because sometimes we can give you the heads up then like we did today. So brace for impact. Buckle up. We are in for a ride. Super League, Wilner's article. We're negotiating back and forth in the PATC, Super League, and all this stuff. Holy smokes. Until next time. From all of us at PATC to all of you, until next time, which could be in a very short time from now, until next time. Please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you